Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming along. I'm not going to make this introduction terribly long. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Rose. I'm responsible for the Off-Bike Social. And we've got a speaker tonight, Vanessa, who's otherwise known as the girl on a bike. And so without further ado, I'm going to shut up and hand over to Vanessa, who's going to speak. And then hopefully there'll be time left for questions at the end. So Vanessa, thank you so much for coming. Lovely to meet you, and over to you.
Amazing. It's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me. Thank you everyone for taking, the evening out of your day to join and listen to me. So yes, I'm Vanessa Ruck, also known as the girl on a bike. And I'm just a girl from Oxfordshire, in all honesty. I'm not a celebrity or daughter of someone famous or anything like that. But my story really came about when I got hit by a car back in 2014, and it was pretty life-changing. So I'm here to talk to you today a little bit about what happened to me on that day and the journey that it has brought me on, which is particularly involving motorcycles, hence probably why this is a topic of interest to all of you. So I would describe myself as a motorcycle rider, racer and adventurer. Now, what a lot of people don't realise is that I wasn't actually an active motorcycle rider at the time of the accident. Now, I'll get into a little bit more about my journey to motorcycles as we continue on. But if you follow me on my social media channels, you can find me the girl on a bike, and I'm on all of the main platforms. You'll there be able to see that I am pretty much addicted to life on two wheels. Any kind of motorcycle is a smile maker as far as I'm concerned, whether that is cruising on a Harley, a big adventure bike, road, street bikes, ADV, all the way through to off-road riding with trials, enduro, and more recently, hard extreme enduro. So this is a photo here of me actually riding adventure bikes in Iceland, back when we were allowed to travel. Unfortunately, yeah, it's been a bit of a difficult time. So I hope everyone's keeping well with everything that's going on with COVID. Now, before we get into the accident and motorcycles, etc., I'd like to take a moment to step back in time a little bit and give you an idea of what life was like for me prior to the accident, because I think it's quite important to help you understand quite how life-changing that day in 2014 was. So I would describe myself as an adrenaline junkie. I absolutely lived for the sports. I was all about fitness, health, the endorphins, and kite surfing was my main sport. So the top two photos here. And we basically, with my husband, who's the photo down at the bottom in the middle, we lived for the wind. When the wind was in, we were at the beach, we were enjoying the riding. When there was no wind, we would rock climb, mountain bike, bicycles. Holidays were all kite surfing, snowboarding, snow kiting. You kind of get the idea. The whole of our lifestyles was around sports. I was incredibly fit and healthy, and my body could do anything that I asked of it. Whether it was visiting my parents and being asked to dig up a random tree in the garden, or jumping on my bicycle and doing 100 miles just for the fun of it. My body was really fit and athletic. And our whole lifestyle was around that kind of fit, active environment. And if I'm really honest with you, I wish I had taken more moments back then to appreciate my body, because it was incredible and was able to do whatever I wanted, and it didn't hurt. But unfortunately, on the 25th of March 2014, in a single moment, life as I knew it changed pretty dramatically, and forever, really. So it was a normal Tuesday. I'd left work for the day and I got onto my Bianchi bicycle to cycle home. And I was actually on the way to the wakeboarding lake to meet my husband and some friends to go wakeboarding after work. And I got about a mile down the road, and a car coming the other way decided not to stop at their red light. And they cut straight across in front of me, leaving me with nowhere to go. And I went straight into the side of the car. And in that moment, life changed. This is the bicycle that I was riding at the time. I was not a bleeding mess on the side of the road. Like, I wasn't scraped up by paramedics. I did go to hospital in an ambulance. I was pretty shaken up, just been hit by a car. But I was discharged from A&E later that night with bruising. So if we fast forward 7 years, in March this year, so it was a 7-year anniversary, I've had 7 surgeries, including a reconstructed right shoulder and right hip. So if we think about the reality of being diagnosed with bruising initially through to the actual extent of the impact with that car, it gives you a little bit of an idea of quite how much of a battle it has been trying to get my body back to fitness. And ultimately, I've always been on a mission to try and get my body back to being pain-free. I've unfortunately had to readjust my expectations somewhat because I don't think I'll ever be pain-free. It's something I manage every day. But instead, setting my goals on being able to make the most of every day and get back to sports and being active and doing what I can do with my slightly reconstructed body. So here are a couple of photos from across the last 7 years. Now, with the implications of the accident, the 7 surgeries weren't all up front straight away. It's kind of worked out that I've had to have a surgery almost once a year across a 7-year period. So at the moment, I'm coming up to 11 months since my most recent hip surgery, 2 on the shoulder, 5 on the hip. And looking at these photos, I've been through some moments in life where I don't think I realised that the world could go quite so dark and painful and painful. Some really, really challenging, hard days, bedbound. I would describe the recovery as being like a roller coaster. Now, the reason I say a roller coaster is because there's been ups and downs. And so in the downs, I'd have major surgery, I'd be bedbound, I'd be going through a lot of rehabilitation and recovery, and then I'd be following all of the medical advice and doing my hydrotherapy, osteopath, shockwave treatment, everything that I could possibly do to take control of my body and try and get it back to fitness. And I'd start to come up the other side of the roller coaster, and I'd start to get a little bit fitter, a little bit more active, get to the point where eventually they're like, yeah, you can try riding a motorbike, you can try cycling, doing a little bit more. And each time, this is the high on the roller coaster, it felt absolutely incredible. But I'd then realize, no, I'm not right. My body hurts. It's not fixed. I know my body. I'm 28 years old. I shouldn't be dependent on painkillers. And sure enough, they do other tests. And yeah, sorry, it's complications. We missed that. The body is incredibly complex and I need more surgery. And at that point, back down the roller coaster into the darker days. Now, the physical recovery has been incredibly challenging. I do manage pain now ongoing with my hip and will almost certainly need a full hip replacement in the not too distant future. My shoulder I would describe as grumpy, but I'm incredibly proud of where I've managed to get my body to now through a lot of rehabilitation. But what I really want to emphasize in this recovery is actually the mental health side of things, because I'd probably say that the mental health recovery has been more difficult than the physical, even with 2 reconstructed body parts. Now, I was actually diagnosed with 2 mental health disorders in the aftermath of the accident. The first one was a fear of the road, which we'll get to in a moment. And the second one was something called change disorder. Now, it manifests differently in different people, but for me, it led to me no longer seeing myself as me. Vanessa was that fit person pre-accident. She was strong and capable and could kite surf and do 13 pull-ups and 3 sets. She was fit. And this broken, pathetic, painful, useless body, it wasn't me. I didn't see myself as me. And I actually talked about myself in the third person, which was incredibly confusing for other people because they were like, wait, Vanessa? Who's Vanessa? I thought you were Vanessa. Now, it took me getting to the point where that I realized I was not okay and that I needed help. And so I got help, and I had a lot of counseling and support. And I would say it certainly didn't happen overnight, but in time, I slowly got to the point, not necessarily where I loved my body, but where I accepted my body. And the acceptance of my body was a really important part on my journey, because by accepting my body, I was able to then give it the nurture, the love, the support that it needed to get through the trauma. And at the end of the day, this is the only body, the only home I'm ever going to have. So accepting it was quite an important step. Something that makes me smile actually looking at these photos here is the reoccurrence of my teddy, because no one is too old to have a teddy bear, and in some of those really dark moments he was a pretty incredible support. I often get people asking about the photo at the bottom in the middle, and why is Teddy on your face? It's a good question. Yeah, I realise Teddy is on my face. So this was a couple of days after my shoulder reconstruction. So I wasn't in a very good place. I was in a lot of pain, feeling pretty sorry for myself and hurting. And my big brother came to see me in the hospital. My big brother, being my big brother, wanted to make his little sister smile, and he thought, I know what I'll do. I'll put Teddy on her face. Now there was going to be two ways that this could go. It was either going to really upset me because Teddy was on my face and I couldn't move to take Teddy off my face, or it was going to make me smile because Teddy was on my face and I couldn't move to take Teddy off my face. Thankfully, my big brother knew me really well, and in a moment of pretty horrific darkness, he managed to put a little smile on my face. And the best bit is that my mum managed to take a photo of it, and it's a nice little sparkle to reflect on from those times. Anyway, enough about Teddy. You get the idea, though, that physically and mentally it's been quite a journey and incredibly life-changing. My sports went right out the window immediately, including a lot of friendship circles and lifestyle activities. But how do motorcycles come into this? That's a fair question. I often get that so hang on a minute. You got hit by a car, potentially could have died, life-changing injuries, and then you decide to get on a motorbike to try and get over it. What did your mum think about that? Yeah, I realise it's not your most natural journey to motorcycles. So let's have a little bit of a run through of how I got into the motorbikes. So the first step of it actually was prior to the accident. So back when I was at university, I had a work placement in the Bahamas on a really remote island. Stick with me, this is a true story. And I was really lucky to be able to move to this island, Eleuthera. But as a student, I couldn't afford a car and I needed a way to get around the island. And I thought, I know, I'll get a motorbike. I'd never ridden a motorbike and there wasn't a motorbike on the island, but I was like, how hard can it be? Other people ride bikes, right? So I went online, did some research, and I found a Lifan in 250. And I was like, perfect. Had it shipped in and it arrived in a box. I'm not talking about a motorbike in a box. I'm talking about the parts of what would be a motorbike if you knew how to put them together in a box. I was like, what have I got myself into? Thankfully, a local bush mechanic, in exchange for a bottle of rum, put it all together and showed me where the button and the twist and all the things were, and off I went on my way. I never remember learning to ride it. It was just something that I needed to do to get around the island. So this was my first bike, called Scorpion, and I realised that I could strap my spear for spearfishing down the side. I could put my fins and snorkel on the back, and it was absolutely fantastic. When I then came back to the UK to finish my degree, I'll be honest, I didn't see myself as a biker. I had the bike out there, and it was a practical means to get around. I didn't really get biking. I did do my full direct access motorbike license, and then I didn't really have the funds or the desire to get a motorcycle. So years and years and years went by where I didn't ride a motorbike. And then my husband and I, no, sorry, I'm skipping in the story. I'm getting excited, going too far ahead. We're not there yet. So then the accident happened, and I was in a pretty tough place. I was no longer able to cycle to work to do my commute, which I did rain or shine, hail or snow, 16 miles a day, and that's how I got to the office. And in the aftermath after the accident, once I was back at work, I had over a year and a quarter off work across the years. I was really struggling with the traffic, and one Friday night I was sat with my husband and a friend, and I just sort of drifted off out of the conversation. I was like, oh, can I get a motorbike? My husband was like, what? Okay. I was like, it's genius. I can skip the traffic, save money on fuel, not worry about parking, and it will be really, really fun. Now, at this point, my brain wasn't thinking about what the reality of getting a motorcycle meant, i.e. riding it on the road. That was like the next battle. So in comes my Suzuki Bandit 600. And what I can't emphasize enough here is how terrifying it was getting on that bike. Every single bit of my instincts, my insides, knew it was a really bad idea. I'd been diagnosed with a fear of the road. I was not really in a position where I wanted to be out on the road, but I had committed. I'd got this bike, and I was very determined that I wasn't going to let one momentary lapse of judgment of a car driver take away my ability to get out there on the road, to enjoy life and experience things like riding a bike. So there are a few things that I think that were quite important in my ability to overcome the fear and get over, well, I'd say swing my leg over. I don't think I swung my leg over with my hip. I got on the bike. Now, the first one I think that I'm grateful for is that when I was a kid, I was lucky enough to be able to play with ponies, and I genuinely think the sole purpose of ponies, like their life mission, is to get their rider on the ground. So I fell off quite a lot, and my mum would always come over, pick me up, brush off the dirt, wipe away the tears, while secretly checking that I'm okay, and tell me to get back on the horse. And you always got back on. And I knew that I needed to take that same approach with motorcycles. I then also discovered something called mindfulness, and that was something that I discovered through my therapy, helping me with the mental health challenges. And the key thing that mindfulness helped me with is realizing that I'm in control of my own thoughts, and I have the choice to allow thoughts in or block them out or change my focus. And it's something that I use multiple times a day now, helping me deal with managing the ongoing pain from the accident. But at this point, it really helped me in overcoming getting back on the motorcycle. But getting back on that bike was incredibly scary. I tried to ease myself into it gradually, going on some quieter roads, trying to build my trust in the road systems again. And the first time I rode it, I was terrified. Second time I rode it, I was terrified. Fifth time, 10th time, and 50th time, I was still terrified getting on that motorcycle. And actually, even very occasionally, 7 years on, I will still get flashbacks that take me back to that accident, but that's okay. Because I'm human and I've had trauma, and I'm not going to let it stop me or control me. I just try and respect that and be kind to myself. But if anyone has ever cried in a motorcycle helmet, you'll realise quite how awkward it is. Like, for one, you've got this visor and these big gloves and you can't really wipe your eyes, and then you get the tears and they start steaming up and you can't see at all. And I joke about it now, but it was I had some Really good Vanessa pet talks, let's just say that, trying to keep my confidence and riding on. So the next step in the motorcycles was where the Harley Davidsons came into it. So my husband and I had ridden Harley Davidsons in Texas on a holiday. Now, after the accident, one of the wedding anniversaries that we had, my husband, who is in the Royal Air Force, was away in Afghanistan, and I decided that a afternoon on Harleys could be quite a nice way to celebrate a late anniversary kind of thing when he got back. Now, at this point, it's worth mentioning, hang on, you've got a really damaged shoulder and right hip. How are you able to ride a motorcycle? It tends to be non-riders who question that the most, because there's a sort of a lack of understanding of, like, you don't ride a bike like this, and you certainly don't hold the weight of a motorbike on your legs. I mean, this bike here is probably 340 kilos plus, so if you did have to hold it on my hip, I would drop it anyway, even fit. I wouldn't be that strong. The other thing to emphasize is that over the last 7 years, there have been months and months and months, years, where I've not been able to ride a motorcycle. If we remember the roller coaster of ups and downs, of repetitive surgery and recovery and more surgery and recovery, there's been lots of periods where I've not been able to ride. So it's in one of those higher periods on the roller coaster where we were able to enjoy 2 Harleys for the afternoon in Oxfordshire. What I cannot emphasize enough here is the fact that we went into it with zero intention to buy. But by the end of that day, I really needed that bike in my life. And I can stand here today and very comfortably say that the purchase of Thug, my Diana Street Bob, was the best decision that we made in my mental health recovery from the accident. It was a period of time where I was really struggling. I didn't see the point of much. My friendship circles, my sports, my hobbies, what I did in my spare time, how I unwound, how I coped with stress, all of it was taken away because I was no longer physically able to do those things. And I certainly didn't see the point of having a holiday or taking time off work once I was back at work to, I wasn't a spa break or city break kind of girl. And what the motorcycle with the Harley Davidson showed me was that actually I could have a little bit of adventure, a bit of wind in the hair, a bit of adrenaline without having to be physically fit and able. And for the Harley Davidson, once I was sat on it, I was just comfortable cruising. I kind of describe it like a sofa with a V-twin potato engine in it. And to this day, it actually hurts me less to be on a motorcycle than to be in a car, because until you have an incredibly painful joint, you don't realize quite how much movement it takes to move between the pedals. And once you're on a bike, you put your feet up on those pegs and they really don't have to move much. So over the following years, Harley, Thug, this is my Harley, and I have done lots of miles. We have done over 20,000, I think, in the following 3 years from when I got it. Bearing in mind I got the Harley a couple of years after the accident. And this evening was an evening that I will never forget. So this was the first proper adventure we went on the Harleys. We rode about 6 miles from the house because that's all my body could handle, but I was out of the house. We had a little campfire, we had some wine, a barbecue. I think I'm eating courgette there, but I promise you we had some steak as well. And I felt so alive. Now, for Vanessa pre-accident, this wouldn't have even counted as an adventure. But for where I was in the world right there, this was just the best thing I could possibly have imagined. I was out of the house, I was on an adventure, and I just felt incredible. And this was really the start of a new sense of gratitude for what I did still have around me, for what I could still do, and taking that gratitude to uplift my spirits. And I might not have been able to do what I had really, really wish to do, like go kite surfing or something, but there was still stuff that I could do to make the most of every day and get a little bit of pleasure and happiness. So over the following years, we did lots of miles, as I mentioned, and the Harley was a really important part of my mental health recovery. Now, I wasn't always able to ride it. I did have more surgeries. And in those times, actually, it was quite nice having the Harley because I was able to focus my attention on doing some customization. So maybe I wasn't yet fit enough to ride it, but I was fit enough to be out in the garage on my crutches for half an hour and having a little play with the Harley. And it gave me another arm of something to focus my energies onto and keep me distracted from the physical pain that I was going through. We went on some cool road trips, rode down to the Alps. I actually borrowed a different bike for this trip, so that's down in the Alps. And now you might be wondering, okay, so you got hit, you got the Harley, you started cruising around, like chilling on a motorbike. Where did the mud and the sweat and the hard enduro and the off-road suddenly come from? Yeah, that's a fair question too. So this is me just pretending that you're asking questions because I can't even see you because we're on computers. Hopefully these COVID times.
We are all listening, don't worry.
Amazing. It's good to hear a voice. That was kind of a trick to get something. So where did the off-roading start? It started here. I was bedbound after, I think this was my first hip surgery, so then my first of 5 hip surgeries. I wasn't in the best of places as far as getting on a motorcycle, but a couple of days after this, I made it back home and I was with my husband. I woke up in the morning, and to this day I don't know where it came from, but I rolled over to my husband. Well, I didn't roll over, I couldn't roll, I sort of turned awkwardly and I was like, can I get a motorbike? And he was just like, what? I was like, can I get a dirt bike? And he, okay, yes. And bless him, my husband's really, really supportive. And so we went out. We were really lucky to be at a point in our lives where we were able to, and we went out and got me a dirt bike. So this is Wiz, and that's me on my crutches, giving it a clean. It was 5 months until I could even sit on it. But it was sat there every day as a reminder. Every moment that I hurt too much and I just couldn't find the energy to get out of bed, or I just wanted to give up, or I didn't think I had the strength to keep going, that bike was sat there as a reminder to say, come on, Vanessa, we want to go for a ride. And I think for any kind of recovery, whether it's a sprained ankle or multiple reconstructions from being hit by a car, I think goal setting is an incredibly important part of recovery. And that goes from, short-term goals to keep you motivated and energized every day, give you little wins and uplifts, all the way through to bigger long-term goals like getting on a dirt bike for the first time. So some of my goals were making it to the toilet on my own, so I didn't have to pee on myself in a bedpan because I was terrible with those bedpans. Putting my own socks on, managing to brush my own hair, making it downstairs to have dinner, that was a really big one. Making it out and sitting in the garden, going for a walk on my crutches, all the way through to going out on my dirt bike for the first time. And oh my goodness, I felt so alive when we went out on that bike. It made me realise quite how bad I was at riding a motorcycle, because riding off-road is very, very different to on-road. But it felt incredible. Now, I was able to ride that bike for probably 5 or 6 weeks, and unfortunately the novelty, wow, amazing, this is incredible, and the pain balance shifted over those weeks. Now, not because I did things that I shouldn't have been doing with my recovery, but because there were just further complications with my hip, and I realized that I really hurt, and I knew there was something not right with my hip, and I went back to see the medical team, who did more scans and tests, and unfortunately, sure enough, there was something that had been missed, and no wonder you're in pain, you need more surgery. And I ended up back in surgery. I would describe this as Like being in a dark tunnel. Not one of those really fun ones when you want to bike with some sporty pipes. I'm talking about a really dark, black, long, all-consuming tunnel where you just feel cold and on your own, and the light right at the end of the tunnel is you making it through your recovery. You not needing to have more surgery, you not being in pain, not having to take painkillers. And every time I got told that I needed more surgery, it was like the tunnel was a mile longer, and sometimes it felt like the tunnel went round the corner. And it was in these times that I had to work really, really hard to try and keep my spirits up, to try and focus my energy on goals, on little things in my day to make me smile, whether that was a spoon of mango or cuddling Teddy, calling my mum, sitting in the garden and listening to the birds, finding things to just give me little uplifts in my energy and reassuring myself that I was going to get through it. And also through all of this time, inside, I was trying to work out, how am I going to get back on an off-road motorcycle again? Because I clearly was hooked and I needed to get back out there riding. So what I realized is that a enduro bike was a little bit too big and heavy and risky, and so I swapped for a trials bike. Now, I'm not going to get too bike techie on you, but in a nutshell, an enduro bike is nearly double the weight, tends to be ridden a little bit faster, which means the falls are a little bit more explosive. Trials bike is super light. This bike is 66 kilos, so barely heavier than me. I'm 62 kilos. And you tend to ride them in a much more slow technique, balanced, kind of controlled sort of way. And so I decided, let's swap my bike out, get a trials bike, and I will hopefully be able to ride a motorcycle a little bit sooner following my hip surgeries, which was right. For the first 2 months, once I was able to, all I did was balance on it in the garage. I didn't even turn the engine on because I wasn't able to with my hip. I just stood on it, on the pegs, and balanced. I got to the point where I could balance for 15 minutes without touching the ground, which pretty proud of that personal best. And the amount that it's helped me now I'm back riding again has been pretty cool as well, because balance is really important for all elements of motorcycle riding. So unfortunately, I did have to have more surgery, but once I was, I'm not going to go through every single surgery that I've had following on. I've had 5 on my hip, because I'll probably start to hear some little snores in the webcam. But basically, after each surgery, I went on a mission to do everything in my power, because I know I was the only one that had the power to get my body back to fitness, to do my physio, to take on all the recommendations and get back out riding. So this is me, where I went to visit a friend in Andorra and took my bike, and it made me realize that actually playing around on a motorcycle on big rocks was quite fun. So lots of surgeries, the common theme of lovely Teddy being there to support me. My last surgery was July last year, and I had to be a really big girl and go into hospital on my own because of COVID, which made it extra terrifying, but extra more amazing having Teddy there, so I wasn't completely on my own. It unfortunately won't be my last surgery, but I'm determined to make the most of the body that I have. So what the trials bike taught me was that technical riding on silly terrain was really fun. And so that then led me to try hard or extreme enduro. Now, this is some photos of me with my Husqvarna, and I would describe extreme or hard enduro. So if you were to stand there and look at the terrain ahead of you and think, ooh, yikes, I'm not sure I could walk through there because of the rocks and the hills and the trees and the holes and the cliffs and stuff, and then put yourself on a motorcycle and try and ride through it, that's about how ridiculous hard enduro can be. You fall a lot and it's incredibly physical. I'm determined not to let my body be an excuse to not get out there and give it my all. I am very aware of the body that I have. So the photo on the right is quite a common picture of Vanessa out doing hard enduring. Not the fact that I'm falling, that's common too, but the way I'm falling in this photo. So in some positions, my right hip will go down and it will just go, nah, sorry love, you're going down. And it won't have me and I'll fall over. But that's okay. I'll get back up again and I will keep riding. And I just feel incredibly alive when I'm out there riding my motorcycle, particularly in the more extreme conditions. I'm actually doing a race, Red Bull Romaniacs, hopefully in July if COVID's going to allow it, which is one of the top extreme enduro races in the world. So fingers crossed to make the finish line on that. So my journey through to motorcycles has been a little bit unusual, and certainly taken me through some twists on the road. I'm very frequently seen in this kind of position now, i.e. covered in mud. I'm sure it gravitates towards my face, lots of sweat, but as I said, I feel incredibly alive and very grateful when I'm out on a motorcycle, because I'm proud of where I've managed to get my body back to. I'm very much aware that I am a slightly reconstructed person, but I'm not going to let that stop me getting out there and trying to make the most of every day. So I had a pretty strange realization a few years ago. So I'm going to cue some like, woo, that's like back in time music in case it wasn't obvious. So someone came to me with a magic stopwatch and said, right, we're going to go back to 2 minutes before the accident. What would you change? And I realized that I wouldn't change a thing. Now, despite the unbelievable amounts of pain and dark days that I've gone through, there is an element of me that is hugely somehow grateful for what I've gone through, because of the lessons that it's taught me, the new sense of gratitude and understanding, a better perspective on what's worth fighting for, what's worth getting upset about, what really matters, what really brings me happiness. And it's not working 66 hours in an office for a little bit more money that do I even need. It's friendships, it's experiences, relationships. That's what really brings me happiness. And so maybe in some slightly sadistic way, I'm almost grateful for the accident, for what it's taught me and where it's brought me today. So I'm kind of on a bit of a mission to try and share my story in the hope that it might help bring a little bit of energy and perspective to people out there battling life, because unfortunately life isn't all perfect and amazing. We all have battles and challenges. And sometimes it takes a pretty big curveball around the side of the face to make you realize quite how lucky we are, or what we do have around us. So I really hope that my story can help give some energy to other people, I suppose, and maybe encourage people to ride motorcycles, because they're really fun too. Not essential. So you can find me on all of the different social media channels. So Instagram, YouTube, there's loads of riding footage and adventures and videos on the YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok. Oh, I feel like an old granny on TikTok, but I am on TikTok. And my website, thegirlonabike.com. I'd really love for you to find me, share, hit follow, subscribe, all those kind of things. And I'd really appreciate you joining the journey with me. I do actually have some new merchandise, which I can show you in a moment. And I'm terrified to say that I'm actually writing a book. Now, it's not going to be a blah, blah, blah Vanessa book. It's a book designed to try and help people with battling the challenges that life bring us, with some of the key lessons that I've learned from my accident, with my lessons from, with my story, bringing those lessons to life. So stay tuned for that. But this is an example of some of the merchandise that I've got. Live, dream, believe. I think everyone can make a little bit more of every day. And I think I'm actually wearing it. I am. Look at that. I'm on brand. Coordinated. I really want to thank you for listening. Hopefully no one's asleep. I think you're on mute, so I wouldn't hear any snoring anyway, but I'd love to hear if you have any questions. So I think I will see if Rosie will want to help facilitate or something? 'Cause I can't see anybody.
Vanessa, that was stunning. Thank you so much. And I won't speak, but just to say thank you very much for giving up your time to talk to us as a group. And if people would like to raise their hand, if you want to ask a question, if you put it in. So I've got one here on the chat from Colin Storer, a question for Vanessa. Other than your pre-existing conditions from the original cycle accident, have you suffered any further injury doing enduro? Or have
That's a fair question. I've certainly had some really good bruises. I would say with my enduro riding, I try and go with calculated risk. I'm very aware that with my body particularly, I could have a fall at any moment that's gonna, you know, really jeopardize my body, and I'm okay with that. If I get injured out there riding, at least I'll have been having fun doing it. I wear all of the armor and body protection I possibly can to try and reduce the risks, and I try and work really hard on my skills so that I'm better at falling off or falling off less, kind of thing. I've had some, you know, sprains and pulls, thankfully, nothing major, so we'll see.
Thank you, Vanessa. And James, you've got a question?
Hello. Yeah, so why did you create Girl on a Bike, and has that helped you on your recovery journey?
Yeah, good question. So I was bedbound after my first hip surgery, and I was struggling mentally. I felt like I needed something to put some energy into, and I started my Instagram account initially, and I shared photos of me prior to the accident. I'll be completely honest. I was sharing photos of, like, look how cool I used to be. I could kite surf and snowboard, and then I ran out of photos. And I was like, oh, what do I do now? I can't exactly make anything cool. And I thought, you know what? Let's be real and let's share what I'm going through now. And I never expected it to have resonated and connected with so many people. And it's really sort of gone from there. I then started the other social channels alongside it. I only started my YouTube a year ago. And I feel very, very lucky that I've been able to share my journey, because while I know from the messages I get and the comments I get that my story is helping a lot of other people, it's really helped me as well, because I've connected with other people that are going through battles and challenges, and it's kind of like a two-way energy to just try and kick life in the butt a little bit more, because I kind of feel like social media can be quite toxic, because there are so many also perfect, shiny, pristine lives, and the reality is that, like, life isn't perfect. We all have battles and challenges, and I think with a little bit of, you know, love and support and positive outlook and things like mindfulness, we can all help each other a little bit as well. So I think it's really helped me on a mental level. I'm also incredibly grateful that I had a long-term 10-year career in marketing prior to all of this. And so I've actually been able to use some of my career side to help me to the point that I am now the girl on a bike, which is pretty mad. I still have to pinch myself.
Can I ask a following question to that?
Yep.
So have you found that the Girl on the Bike and that helping with sort of the mental recovery, do you feel that the mental recovery has helped with the physical recovery, and vice versa? Because you mentioned the vice versa. You said that the physical, as you've got better, that's helped you with your mental, but has the kind of getting on board and finding things working out better mentally, has that helped you with your physical rehabilitation?
I think definitely. I think our mental and physical health are so interconnected that they go so hand in hand. I have like this random little exercise which I like to do for people when people are like, I don't think they're connected. So we'll try it and see what people think. So this is just kind of an example of how physical and mental like interact. So what I want you to do is think about something that you absolutely love, or a person, a dog, a horse, an animal, a food, and think about them or it and how they make you feel, and that warm, bubbly, like you really love them. Think about that. Focus on something really positive and smiley. Now I want you to think about something that you absolutely hate, or a person you hate, or a thing that just makes you angry, or that person that cut you up in the car the other day, or pulled out on you when you were riding along. And then think about how that makes you feel inside your chest. And the difference between the light and the fluffy and the love and that the anger, you actually feel it. I don't know if you do. A lot of people seem to say yes. I certainly do. And I think for me that when you're mentally in a good place, you're far better equipped to look after yourself physically. But then also when you're physically in a good place, you're far better equipped to look after your mentally. And I think they really do run hand in hand. And I think they've both been important elements that you can't ignore one or the other. I'm not sure if I've answered your question or I've just waffled.
No, you have answered my question. Thank you very much.
Oh, I think someone's on mute.
I'm now unmuted, but I read Rose's lips. It's really inspiring, your background, before and after the accident. And you mentioned about mental health, and I've sort of had experience working with the military and some of those individuals that have struggled with mental health post-deployment. Obviously, your husband must have been a great support. How did he cope, with the impacts of your injuries, and how did that also affect him?
He has been incredible. Like, I couldn't have wished for a better partner in life, really, because if I think about even just on a really, it's not even on a basic level, after the accident, I was no longer able to kite surf, for example, or any of our sports. And it would have been very easy for him to be like, well, I can still kite surf. I'm still fit. I'll see you later. I'll be back this evening. And he, despite me really trying to make him go, because I had lost it and hurt, and I didn't want him to lose the sports as well, he just said, I don't want to go kite surfing without you. It wouldn't be fun without my soulmate. Let's find something that you can do. And so his support and dedication to be with me and support me through it all was incredible. I was very conscious of the fact that his life completely changed as well. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Harleys became quite so good, because it was something that, again, we got him a Harley, we did it all together, and it gave him some adventure as well. As far as his mental health, he's been fine through it, but he's certainly been hit by the lows as well. He's had to care for me, bath me, do the washing, the cleaning, the lawn mowing, the gardening, everything, the shopping. And he's very much had to care for me and look after me. And at no point has he wavered, but he's definitely had to use a lot of his own strength to do that. I'm very aware of that.
He sounds like a keeper on a good man.
Oh,
thank you very much.
I'm keeping him.
Yeah. I think Neil's next. Thank you.
Neil, would you like to come in? Neil?
You can hear me now. You can hear me now, right?
Now.
Yay.
Right. Thank you. Hi, Vanessa.
Hey.
Thanks for this evening. Riveting conversation. I have one question, which I think says probably more about me than it does about you, in that you have at no point mentioned the car driver or the consequences for the car driver. Maybe it was a hit and run. Maybe it's a conscious part of the whole process. But I'm very curious that, blame could have been part of your story, but you haven't mentioned what happened to him.
Yeah, so they did stop. Do you want the long story or the short story? The long story is quite interesting, but it's a couple of minutes longer.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Okay, so they stopped at the scene of the accident, and the police came into the ambulance just before I pulled away and just said, look, just wanted to let you know, drivers said exactly the same thing. They jumped the red light. Don't even give this another thought. Go get yourself fixed. Amazing. Following day, I get a phone call from the police. I'm back home, obviously, but not in a great place. Feeling pretty bruised, because that's all I had, bruising. And the police called me up and said, right, we need to come see you. And I'm like, I can't face a visitor. Can we just talk on the phone? No, sorry, Vanessa, we need to come and see you. So they came round and they sat on my sofa in my living room, and they said, so yeah, you jumped the red light. We've spoken to the driver, we've looked at the traffic lights, and the story doesn't match up. You jumped the red light, so all the blame's on you. Horrific. I'm pretty broken, and I know that I didn't jump that red light. I forced my husband, which didn't take much, to get me in the car, and we drove up to the junction, and we tried to understand what the police were saying about the light sequences and blah, blah, blah. And it just didn't make sense. But that was it. The police had swapped sides, and the whole accident was put on me. About 3 days later, my husband was getting my cycling kit out to wash it, and he, being a hero, checked the pockets and found a business card in my pocket. And immediately I remembered that the car behind me had stopped and said, I will be a witness. I saw everything, but I don't have time to wait for the police. Here's my card. Passed that over to the police. They then spoke. Absolutely, driver's fault. Driver jumped the red traffic light, and they were prosecuted. But obviously the additional... Sorry, my light just fell over. Sorry, but the additional mental stress of that was pretty horrific. So I'm just trying to multitask fixing my light whilst carrying on the story. So anyway, the driver was prosecuted, and why do I not mention it? I was really angry and upset, definitely, and the why me and what were you doing, and I realized really quite early on in my recovery that all the anger did was make me feel worse. The example I just did about that love-hate thing was just a twisted, bitter, painful knot inside, and all it did was make everything that I was going through more twisted and bitter and painful and angry. And I realized very quickly that I had to just release it. It was an accident. She didn't maliciously charge across the headlights and make for the blonde person on a motorbike. It was an accident, and I had to let go and forgive for my own benefit, my own health, basically. So that didn't happen overnight. It's not like I have a magic switch where I just turned off the anger, but I think it was about realizing that there was no benefit from being angry other than negative impacts, and I had to release it and let it go.
That's great. That's huge. Thank you for explaining. Thank you very much indeed.
No worries.
Anybody else got any questions? I'm going to ask you a question then. Oh, James has got his hand up. Sorry, James.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realise I was unmuted. So I'm actually really interested in the hard enduro, and I was wondering if you could sort of elaborate a little bit more about how you found out about it and how did you actually get into it?
Yeah, so I mean, literally 2 summers ago, I would have freaked out if you put a curb in front of me. And now I'll tell you to put a log in front of me or a rock or something. It's not something that you just suddenly doing silly terrain at a Werndu Quarry, North Wales. It's been, progressive, learning the skills, and the trials riding, I would say, is the best way to start getting into it, the safest way as well, because a lot of the skills you get on the trials bike, you then just transfer up onto the bigger enduro bike, which is a little bit less forgiving. How do you get into it? There are schools and experience places that you could go. For example, Graham Jarvis has a school in Spain where they're actually focused on more hard enduro kind of techniques, so de-weighting wheels, balance, popping, etc., all that kind of stuff. How did I get into it? I just think it was a random ping pong journey, really, because it started off-roading, really gentle green lanes around Oxfordshire, made friends, started to meet new people, went to places like the Adventure Bike Festival, which was 2 summers ago. That was in the BC times. And and then started playing on the trials bike, meeting people there, meeting riders who were better than me and being like, whoa, how on earth do you do that? And then slowly, you know, picking up lessons or skills from them, and just progressing, watching things on YouTube. It's kind of just sort of evolved. It wasn't like I just saw a sign for extreme enduro, went, cool, let's go. It kind of developed with my riding. I'm not sure if that's a very helpful answer, but there are definitely enduro places in the UK that you could go to try and progress skills in a sort of a supported environment, or there are pay and plays and arenas that you can go to which have a little bit more of the harder terrain.
No worries. Thank you very much. I've got another question as well.
Cool.
I noticed you mentioned on your site that you've been to Iceland and you've done a bit of stuff around Iceland. Can you tell us a bit more about that? If that's allowed, Rose?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's some really good YouTube videos on my YouTube. If I'm allowed to say my own video is really good. That sounded awful. I like my YouTube video of the Iceland trip. So basically we're there on 701s, Husqvarnas, and we ride with the locals, and they are the only Icelandic enduro company out there. So basically Vikings, full on Vikings, and they organized everything. I didn't have the time to start researching where you ride and where you could stay, you know, leave it to the people that know their land like the back of their hand. We did 7 days. It was wet isn't a wet enough word. It was like wet from above, wet from below. It was cold. You basically got to know that you're going to have wet feet for the week, wear as many layers and waterproofs as you can, and as long as you're dry and warm. It was just absolutely incredible. The landscapes and terrains, 1 minute you're in thick dark black lava sand, then you're in rock beds, then you're in huge plains, river crossings, more river crossings than you can shake a stick at. It was breathtaking. I would do the exact same trip again tomorrow and wouldn't even consider the fact that I've done it before. I don't want to do the same thing again. It was just amazing. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
So I'm going to ask you a question now. Did you do any training? Did you teach yourself all of this? Was this all self-taught, or did you have any kind of training?
I've done a couple of training things. Like I did go to that Graham Jarvis school in Spain. I've done a day with Paul Bolton, but a lot of it is through making friends with people, being that like person that just speaks to anybody, and then riding with them and tagging along. And when you ride with better riders, you pick up on what they're doing. They inevitably give you tips. You learn, watch loads of YouTube videos on how-tos and tutorials. So it's a bit of a combination of it all, really. And I think something that's really helped me is trying to ride as many different types of bikes in as many different types of terrain, because riding that bike in sand and this bike in mud and that one in something else that's not mud or sand, it all helps. Yeah. And the progression in my road riding, actually, from doing the off-roading is incredible as well. So it's probably a combination of everything.
Thank you. Anybody got any more questions for Vanessa? They've all gone very quiet.
They've been quiet the whole time with their mute buttons.
Yeah, we had a speaker from Canada a couple of weeks ago, and it kind of interfered with the bandwidth and messed about a little bit. So yeah, we decided to do it this way this time. I mean, you know, if nobody's got any more questions, somebody saying thank you. So I thought there might be a question. I think it's really powerful that you've talked so much about the mental health side and the mental health recovery, which is kind of a real theme at the minute in the news and in life, isn't it, really? But I think that's the one thing that we've all become much more focused on. So thank you for having the kind of courage to kind of talk about that side, because I think that's the really difficult bit. I have to say, chaps, particularly for women, to be able to kind of say that out loud in kind of fairly male-dominated groups. So thank you for that, Vanessa.
Right.
Janet's got her hand up, so I'm going to invite Janet.
I've unmuted you, Janet.
Do I need to unmute at my end as well? Yes, I do. Yeah, it's
yeah.
I just wondered whether it comes naturally to you to be this vulnerable about your experiences, or whether that's also something that has been hard won, to be this open about what it was like to go through that.
Gosh, it's hard for me to really know, because I'd never gone through anything like it before to know if I was okay to be vulnerable. I think for me, if I can help other people through the pain that I've gone through, it somehow makes the pain I've gone through feel more worthwhile. And if me being, I almost don't see it as me being vulnerable or showing my vulnerable. I almost see it as me feeling strong enough to be able to share it somehow. And I definitely got better at sharing it. The first presentation I did, I just cried multiple times. It was in person. There was only 9 people there, and they were really nice. Thankfully, they didn't eat me alive. I just kept crying. And I think actually sharing it and talking about it has helped me process it as well. But I completely see what you mean, that I'm being very honest about what challenges I've gone through and on my knockdowns, but I don't really know how to better answer that question. I just hope it can help people.
Got it. Thank you.
Tony, Matt, have you unmuted Tony?
I have unmuted Tony, yeah.
Tony,
go ahead.
Over to you.
I was going to say, that's a fantastic presentation, Vanessa. I'm currently recovering, having smashed my ribs up on a BMW Enduro event in North Wales. It's only 6 weeks ago. I'm already Googling going on a smaller machine and doing the same thing. I just haven't told my wife yet.
Googling what? Going on a...
I'm going to do another off-road event, I think on a smaller machine. A 1250 is a bit big, really, to crash big time.
Yeah. Have you tried any trials? Inch Perfect trials are a good one for trials.
Okay. Thank you for
experience.
that. I mean, I heard my ribs break when I crashed.
Ouch. So
yeah.
Will that make you laugh?
It didn't laugh. No, well, 6 weeks ago, I can laugh now. I can sneeze now. It doesn't make me cry. I love the emotion, but that's a fantastic presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Anybody want to ask any more questions?
I think as there's no more, Vanessa, on behalf of everybody at Way Valley, and before I hand over to Rose at the end, as the acting chairman, just like to say thanks ever so much for such an inspiring presentation. I could tell by all the comments as they were coming through how well received it has been, and also to thank some of our guests from outside of Way Valley, TVAM and some others that have turned up to listen to you tonight. I hope they've enjoyed it as well. But thanks again. Rose, over to you.
Thanks, Matt. And actually, Matt said it all really, Vanessa. Thank you. I mean, I've met you before tonight, so it must be a really daunting thing to turn up to Strange Club with strange people to speak so openly. So thank you for doing it. Thank you for being honest and kind of and telling us your story. Hugely inspiring, and something which I think I shall reflect on tonight. And your positivity it really comes across. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for joining us. I don't know if you can see the comments coming through, but some really positive comments of thanks and inspiring, and those kinds of words are coming up. So Vanessa, thank you. Thanks everybody for turning up, and hopefully we get to meet all in person at some point in the future. But really great to hear you. Thank you, and best of luck with kind of whatever comes next, and whether that's adventure or reconstruction. Hope that all goes really, really well for you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. It's been a real treat. Thanks people for coming. Have a good rest of the evening, and yeah, lots of applause, and thanks, Vanessa. Thank you all so much.